this computer. And then I'm going to restart and say welcome to everyone. Thank you for coming this evening. John wrote me up a great script, so I'm going to read because this is my first time having it be done formally. Good evening and welcome to Petaluma's new Ask an Expert. It's a series that we're starting now on Wednesdays, and they're corresponding, as you know, with the various actions in the blocks. I'd like to thank Annie Stewart, who is a block leader and a volunteer for Cool Petaluma, for coordinating the speakers and making this all possible. And make sure that your block leaders are informed of this, as Derek did a great job of doing. It's open to even neighbors that aren't a part of your block. They're welcome to join us for any of these and to share the videos that we'll be posting. We're still figuring out how to post the videos and where to post the videos, so they've been a little delayed, but I think we've just figured it out. So those will be up soon. I'll be introducing our speaker in a few moments, but before I do, I just want to ask that everyone please mute themselves. As there's unintended background noise. Like right now, I have a quince tree that is hitting my office that I'll put myself on mute when I get started. And as I noted, we'll be recording it and publishing it on our YouTube channel, and I'll be sending that out. Our speaker will be presenting for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then after, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions, or you can drop them into the chat as we go, and then I'll help facilitate those at the end. When we circle back for the Q&A. And so for this evening, it's my great opportunity to introduce Stephanie Van Hook of the Metta Center. And she is going to be talking to us tonight. I'm actually going to let Stephanie, you'll do a much better explanation of introducing about what you're talking about. But thank you for coming. I'm really looking forward to hearing about this. I've signed up for your virtual workshop because Derek introduced me to y'all. So thank you for coming this evening. And then were you able to get the screen share to work okay?
Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
It says I am screen sharing.
Interesting.
I'm seeing it.
Oh, you are. You know why? I have a second screen. Okay. I now see. So is everyone, I have to see this two different ways. I have to move y'all from the screen that you're on. And now I can see this. Can everybody see the screen? Perfect. Okay. Stephanie, take it away. It's all yours.
Thank you. And I hope that somebody would let me know if you can see anything besides my slides on my screen too.
We see your top bar. I don't know if that's what you mean. Do you want it to? Okay.
No, just anything else. But I'm Stephanie Van Hook. I'm with the Metta Center for NonViolence. I'm Stephanie Van Hook. Metta Center for NonViolence.
Oops, there's a big feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Deb, do you want to mute Allison?
Okay. Sorry, there was a bit of feedback, so I'll just start over. I'm Stephanie Van Hook. I'm with the Metta Center for NonViolence. We're here on Keller Street, Petaluma. And next to me here, you'll see Michael Negler. He's the founder of the Metta Center, a mentor of mine, and usually he's the one who does the presentation. So I'm bringing him along in case there's something that I forget to say. I give him the right to speak into the presentation with me. And I'm, depending on how much time we have, he will be my co-presenter for helping to model some material, but we may or may not have time for that. Well, I have to say I'm a little bit nervous because I'm used to hosting a radio program where I'm not seen, and so to be seen visually when I'm presenting something that I care a lot about, makes a person a little bit nervous. And to be called a conflict expert, is sort of strange for me because I'm mostly a conflict nerd. I'm really curious about conflict, and I have a lot of them. And I'm fascinated by them. I'm fascinated by conscious conflict in particular. people who go through conflict skillfully and artistically and know who they are when conflict is happening and how they manage it. And I'm completely uh, uh, annoyed by unconscious conflict of dynamics that come into conflict that can't be discussed or talked about or looked at. And so that's really where the rubber hits the road for me is taking conflict and turning it into a conscious process instead of an unconscious, this is what we did when we learned we were kids. And so this is how we go about the world. I look to conflict as a learning opportunity. Okay, so, and the thing I want to say is that we can all be conflict experts, because I have a feeling that I'm not the only one in the world or even on this presentation who tends to find themselves in conflict, disagreements, because that's natural. It's one of the most natural things that happens, and hopefully this will come out more in the presentation. And now I want to switch slides. So to get us started, like any good beginning of a workshop, you understand what the model is that a lot of people in the field of conflict resolution and conflict transformation work from, and this is called the Thomas Kilmann conflict styles. And you can go online, Google or DuckDuckGo, the Thomas Kilmann conflict styles, and you can find ways of evaluating which conflict style you are if one of them doesn't immediately jump out and speak to you. But they basically say there's about 5 approaches to conflict that people have, which I've listed here on the slide. Accommodating, meaning my needs don't matter. I'm just going to keep trying to help do what you want when I'm in conflict with you. Accommodating, compromising, let's find ways of you get what you want, I get what I want. Avoiding conflict, this is one that I find is very challenging. People who just don't want to involve themselves in conflict at all, and therefore look for ways of avoiding it. Collaborating, looking for collaborative solutions in conflict. Or competing, I'm going to win this conflict. This conflict is a kind of a competition. And just putting this out here at the very beginning of the kind of know thyself. Michael was a former Greek scholar, so we were talking about where know thyself comes from, and we believe it's on the Oracle of Delphi, and Socrates quotes it. But knowing that you have probably a 90% style of conflict is very, very important. And knowing that people around you might have a very different approach to conflict too. While I might be an accommodating conflict style, and then when I engage with somebody who is a competing conflict style, if I don't know that ahead of time, and I don't understand that not everybody's going to accommodate, the conflict can kind of heighten and get more tense and get a little bit worse, because we're coming at it from different angles. So I find that just at the very beginning, understanding that people have different conflict styles, and the more that we understand where people could be coming from, the better that we can work together. That said, so that's sort of the basic model of conflict. But I'm going to now go into a different angle, which is at the Metta Center, our work is really right now based in helping to transition to what's called a new story of humanity, looking at human nature from our highest ideals, from what we're capable of doing and becoming, going against the grain of the message of what it means to be human that's given to us by the commercial mass media, capitalism, consumerism, into something different. And the old story and new story affects all the different systems that we're part of, including one that's often overlooked, which is how do we engage conflict. And just think for a moment that conflict does not necessarily just mean conflicts that you're aware of. Conflict doesn't just mean, conflict with people that you like. Usually what happens is that conflict really becomes apparent when it's with somebody that you don't really know that well. You don't really want to continue the relationship. Um, who you are in conflict begins to come out when you're less invested in the person who's in front of you. So what we're going to begin to explore is why that's the case. Why isn't everybody who's in front of us, why isn't all of humanity a part of who we see ourselves as and who we're trying to grow together with through the practice and the art of conflict? And so that's what we would call the new story. And I put this is Metta's logo, which is a spinning wheel from the Indian freedom struggle, which symbolizes constructive conflict resolution, right? Boycotting British cloth, but spinning our own cloth, right? So this wheel will remind us on the various next points that I'm going to make that every time you see this wheel on my slide, remember that we're coming at it from the news story angle. That if you're like, that's not possible, we can't do it, just remember that it is possible and we're looking at a new story. So the old story of conflict is a little bit, it's implicit in our systems, and I'm sure that we all know it, but I just want to make it a little bit explicit here in this presentation. Some of the voices of the old story of conflict are that some people just cause conflict. It's who they are. They cause trouble. They're troublemakers. Eventually, we need to punish them or fix them, and we can blame them for the cause of the conflict. There are top-down styles of addressing conflict, authoritarian centers that then decide who's right and wrong. The needs of the whole really don't matter as much as the needs of the people in power who have the power. So there's a huge source of othering. Conflict is seen as negative or bad. We don't like conflict. Doesn't do any good. We have other people solve our conflicts and disagreements for us. Anywhere from so we've disempowered. It's a disempowered model, right? Somebody else is doing it for us, and the safety isn't for everybody. Safety is just for the people who deserve safety. It's sad to make this explicit, but this is a bit of the system that we're living in, and this is the story that we tell ourselves, that we're absolutely seeing in the commercial mass media about how conflict works. So what do? Well, you get your guns and you create your militias and you protect yourself against the other people who are going to hurt you. The new story of conflict is very inspiring and lofty and very practical. Gandhi called himself a practical idealist, right? That every ideal, every higher vision that we have actually can be put to work and put to the test. It just takes practice and it takes a commitment. And so one of the most important aspects of the new story of conflict is that conflict actually has a purpose. That conflict can bring us closer together. Conflict can help us discover who we are, what really matters for us, where we need to do our work as human beings, where we're leaving people out, are we on the right track? Are we taking care of everybody? Conflict has an incredible purpose that helps us to build relationships, and on the one hand, which is sort of the smaller aspect, but it also has a cosmic purpose. Conflict helps us evolve. It's natural. There's a often quoted saying in nonviolence that conflict is natural, but violence isn't. So remembering that conflict does not mean violence. Okay. In the new story of conflict, we explore the idea of power with versus power over. What does it look like when everybody's being led from within and sharing power? Instead of an elite few who have power and punish with that power. Again, everyone matters in the new story of conflict. We have everybody's needs matter, and that's not always easy, but it's again a part of what we need to grow into as a species and understand. We seek understanding, which, you know, it's just one word, but the practice of it can take an entire lifetime. So understanding, curiosity. We look for transformation, restoration. You've probably heard of things like restorative justice, transformative justice, these kinds of tools, as well as communication. More communication shuts down, the greater the opportunity for dehumanization, for misunderstanding, for lack of curiosity, for violence. So with the new story of conflict, we are opening up communication in ways that feel safe, and not always ways that are easy, but we practice communicating what's inside and being curious about what's inside for others. There's something called common security, where our security is shared. What makes me safe would make you safe too. My safety isn't dependent on your being unsafe, on like having police patrol my police being able to take care of me, but targeting my neighbors is that's not common security. And it rests on something called something we say is a higher image of who we are, which is that we see ourselves as mind, body, and spirit, and that we have needs on all of these levels. We have spiritual needs, we have physical needs, and we have intellectual mind needs. And we find that we call ourselves conflict curious because it does serve a higher purpose. So a higher image of who we are says that we are capable of forgiveness, and so are other people. We're capable of meeting everybody's needs, and we're capable of growing closer together, even when it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. We have the kind of the faith or the vision that that's going to happen, that it's possible. And just take a second and think about where in our society, where in our culture do we get this kind of a message that tells us and helps us remember these things. Maybe it's in some friendships, but it's definitely not mass messaging, and which then conditions us to kind of lose hope in who we are and what we're capable of and what we can handle when it comes to conflict. Now we want to shift. We're the Metta Center for Nonviolence, so we want to shift into understanding that nonviolence is the kind of the bridge that brings us from conflict happening to getting to its full transformation. And so everything that I just described is actually forms of nonviolence in practice, nonviolent action. But here's our working definition of nonviolence at the Metta Center, and I've made bold a few words because I think they're important in the definition. And I'll just read it. Nonviolence is also known as love in action. As a constructive power, it's unleashed when potentially destructive drives like fear or anger are converted into creative equivalents like love and compassion. Nonviolence, when harnessed systematically and in an experimental scientific spirit, can be used as a force for realizing greater security, justice, and social unity. So a few of the concepts that I've highlighted here: it's a constructive power. Nonviolence is a form of power. It's something that we should program into ourselves to understand. Potentially destructive drives like fear or anger, meaning that fear and anger are not necessarily bad, right? They're energies, and we can actually harness them and do something with them. So if you have anger or fear, be happy, because this is energy that you can do something with. And the other part I emphasize is the scientific spirit, because that's all we can do every day, every moment, is just try something new. I'm going to that didn't work the way that I handled that situation and at that time. What would happen if I tried something new in this other situation? Okay, so that's really the spirit of nonviolence. And we have this really simple model called the 2 hands of nonviolence. It comes from the peace scholar and journalist Barbara Deming. Some of you may know of her work. She's a wonderful, wonderful writer, and I do suggest looking up her work. But it's called the 2 hands of nonviolence. So if everyone just takes you have your 2 hands available, just to take your 2 hands and put them out, one facing outward, that I'm not going to endure your injustice, but on the other hand, I'm open to you as a human being. I'm reaching out. I'm offering my humanity with yours. I'm not going to endure your injustice means also I have my boundaries. This is the stop, enough. This is, you can't go any further. And I'm not going to dehumanize you in the process of resisting what is against my conscience. And we really feel like this is nonviolence in a nutshell, because you're telling the other person as well, I'm not against you as a human being. And you're telling yourself, I'm not the worst thing I've ever done. Right? 2 hands. Okay. So I promised Derek that I would help to share some other tools of nonviolence. And I know this is one of his favorite tools. We call it Clara. How much time do I have? Do I have about 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes? Okay. So I'll just review Clara very, very briefly. But if you notice that Clara, each letter stands for a practice. It's not just something that you learn how to do overnight. But here you go. It's this tool is basically used when you're severely agitated and maybe somebody's like right there in your face, and you need a way to de-escalate the situation right away. So just remember Clara, and where the C means that you center. So centering could mean taking a deep breath. It could mean, I like Michael had added to our cool block present document that in conflict, part of your mind is upset, and part of it isn't, and to recognize that part of your mind that isn't upset. So centering really is about that, trying to focus on what is that calm place in your mind, in your heart that exists, trying to kind of root yourself in that, so that if you're shaky or nervous or your heart's beating fast, you get it to slow down. And then you can give yourself and give your full attention to listening to what the other person in front of you is saying. Again, there's wonderful people in Petaluma who offer tools for learning how to listen. It's a practice. It's something we can do all the time, but especially when we're in conflict, it becomes really important, because one of the things that happens is that we kind of want to shut down and not listen to what the other person's saying and just say what we want to say. So we can just center, calm, give our attention, and listen. It's really a humanizing approach, because when somebody feels listened to, they feel rehumanized. And so then you can affirm. Okay, so you've centered, you've listened, you can affirm, yeah, I hear you. I hear what you've said. You don't necessarily have to agree with what they're saying, but you can also look for something that you can agree with in what they're saying. Yeah, I care about the lives of women and babies too, right? This is important. This is an important topic, right? I'm affirming without necessarily agreeing with what's being said. And then the next part is I've added an extra R, repeat and rehumanize. Sometimes people need to feel like you have heard them by just giving them a brief response, that you have actually listened to what they've said. So I hear you feel that abortion should be illegal. in every state. I haven't added my point yet. Only if you start to see the other person, kind of wanting to begin to engage with you, that's when you can add something else. Well, I have a different view of that. I wonder if you'd be curious in hearing the way that I see things or the way that I understand things. So if you were to do a workshop with the Metta Center and our friends, we would definitely go into this practice a lot more. Everybody would get a chance to do it. We'd go into all of the different details of this presentation a lot more. But hopefully this slide, if you can take notes from it or take a screenshot or something, would be helpful in the short term. And the other tool, which it doesn't necessarily seem like a tool, but it is kind of a no-brainer, is that seeking support. So in nonviolence, we need to have supportive community because it really is going against the grain of our culture. So if you can find a person to practice your nonviolence with, you can practice a difficult situation ahead of time by knowing that you're getting ready to go into something you're not ready for and saying, hey, would you mind role playing this with me? Try to act really angry, and I'm gonna try to help my neural system calm down in the face of anger in front of me, so that if that person's really angry, I'm prepared for it a little bit more. I've actually prepared my nervous system for it. After you've been in a difficult situation, definitely debrief, talk about what worked, what didn't work, what happened. Try to reconnect with the environment around you, name 5 things that you see, things like this that just help bring you back into your body, back into your heart and mind, and keep you from feeling isolated and alone in what's happening in the conflict. That said, it's important to seek mature support. So support that isn't going to tell you you're right and the other person's wrong and the other person's like this and there's nothing they can do or change, but rather what are your highest ideals and what can bring you closer to living those out, and how can I help? It's important to be able to ask for and receive feedback about our own personal behavior. Not everybody welcomes everybody's input on this, so we'll definitely have people in your life who you trust to be able to talk to you about points where they can see where you're unconsciously going about conflict, and how they can help offer support, or even have some kind of a process together where you can talk about personal behavior and commit to constructive growth and learning. All of these things that we've talked about in this short amount of time are years and years and years of practice and learning, and it's every day is an art, and every interaction we have is an opportunity. It can get overwhelming or it can get super exciting. So the Metta Center has a lot of resources to help you in this, and we are also practitioners of this work. We don't always do it perfectly, but we do it earnestly. We have a beautiful film called The Third Harmony: Nonviolence and the New Story of Human Nature, 44-minute documentary, which you can screen at your home or with your friends. We have a book of the same title, and Derek and I did a collaborative board game called Cosmic Peace Force Mission Harmony 3, which is a board game for adults, and goes over some of these kind of conflict positive ideas in it. You can find that at thirdharmony.org. Go over the resources that I put on the Metta Center's site for Cool Block. That's mettacenter.org/Cool Block. There's a cool animation you can share. There's a document full of points that could be used as discussion points. We have courses at the Metta Center that you can take online, learn.mettacenter.org. And right now, for example, we're doing a 30 Days of Nonviolence challenge, where every single day there's a new experiment, a new little piece of learning. And at the end of 30 days, you're not fully nonviolent, but you're still working on it. You learned a little bit more. We have a wonderful thought for the day called Nonviolence Daily, which you can find on our website. And as mentioned at the beginning, I'm a radio host and we have Nonviolence Radio. And with that, I will say thank you very much and open it to any questions if there's any time for that.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Stephanie. That was great. I was Googling, Derek got it before me. It's in the chat, the website that you mentioned. And then I also want to note for those of you that are still going through the Cool Block program, topic 7, which is the resourceful and community rich block. This is where this gets applied. And it shows up as one of the actions is resolving a dispute in your neighborhood. And the Metta Center is listed under there as one of your resources. And so that's why they're here tonight. Does anyone have any questions?